Practice Makes Perfect by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 11, Just a Little Chaos. Whatever will I do with you, brother? Nothing? No, I think not. Sister and brother, just a little chaos. Part 1. John wanted to run. Why, you ask? Doom. That's why. Doom was upon him. Doom upon his head. Doom upon the dorm. Doom upon his life. Doom. Doom. Damnation. Destruction. All of it his. He was dead. He was going to die. Dead man. He, as a cornucopia of pain and destruction, was here to ensure his immediate demise. Maybe he was having a bit of a panic attack. Was this a panic attack? It felt like a panic attack. Sure, fine, that was great. Just a dandy. But really, could you blame him? Oh dear. Child tended her fingers as she regarded him from her perch in Pyrrha's lap. You don't look happy to see me, John. Or why ever would that be? Every reason, all the reasons. His eyes strayed towards the unguarded window. He contemplated lunging at it, crashing through it. He'd hit the ground running and never looked back. He was strong, he was fast. He was certain he could get away if he really wanted to. It was only the knowledge of what would happen after that prevented him from doing so. That would mean abandoning Beacon, and in doing so forsaking all of the friends he'd make here, cutting ties, severing bonds. An image of Pyrrha's grief-stricken face flashed through his mind, followed by the others: Pyrrha, Nora, Ren, Team Ruby, everyone. He couldn't do it. His fingers curled into fists at his sides, biting through his gloves, hard enough to hurt. The pain centered him. Maybe that made him even more of a coward, wanting to cling to something that wasn't real, pretending to be normal when he was anything but. Some might call it a poor hill to die on, but it was his choice. Blue eyes hardened into steely sapphires. His dear sister must have seen it too, because she smiled. You're not going to run, little brother? She touched one finger to the side of her cheek. I'd give you a head start. No, it was the right answer. Her smile grew smug. This would be the second greatest fight of his life, if only because it wasn't something he could win with his fists. He felt an age-old creep into his bones. Each and every Arcchild was powerful in their own right. There could be no denying that. They all had their talents. Some were more specialized than others. Dillian preferred the art of the blade, for instance, relying on it more than her own powers. Likewise, Saffron preferred to rely on her sheer stamina and superior strength to carry the day. Azula preferred her flames, while Jean could win hearts and minds with nothing but a smile and an inspiring speech. John had sought out to broaden his horizons in the hopes of making up for what he lacked. Child was a force unto herself. Maybe it was the mysterious circumstances of her birth. Perhaps she'd taken after Kurama a little too well. She might have just been born off like Sable and Sabrina were. Regardless, it didn't spell well that she was here in his room. She had always been the most emotional and chaotic of them all but able to change her shape at will. If she lashed out here, he'd have no choice but to fight or run. No, that wasn't an option. It was beginning to look like it would be the former. Kurama would be of no help here. He was on his own. May we have a moment? John floundered and felt the floor lurch beneath him. Then again, that might have been his stomach. The sudden realization that he might not have to fight brought with a crushing wave of relief and shame. He didn't want to fight his family. Win or lose, it felt like he'd lose something irreplaceable if he came to blows with his sisters. Certainly, Pyrrha smiled, not realizing just who she was leaving with him. Just remember, we have that trip to Forever Fall tomorrow. John shook his head fiercely. Don't leave me alone with her. She saw it. Is something wrong? Charles' eyes flashed. She saw a single scarlet tail sprout from her back, just visible enough for him to see, and him alone. His defiance deflated. Never mind. Don't mind him. Child gripped his arm. He's shy. She looked between them and dared a reluctant nod. Well, if you're sure it's all right, come. Ren took Nora by the arm. Let's give them some privacy. Aw. She put up a struggle. But I want to watch. Pyrrha was the last to leave, eyes lingering. The door closed, sealing his fate. Child waited a full total of 3 seconds, making certain they'd gone out of earshot. Brother, brother, brother. Finally, she released him, clasped both hands behind her back, and turned to face him entirely. Whatever am I going to do with you? Nothing. John fought down his rising gorge and plastered what he hoped, prayed, was a winning smile on his face. I'm happy to see you and all, but I have things under control. Look, he continued, choosing every word with the utmost of great care. I know why you're here, and it's not necessary. His beloved sister favored him with a cherubic smile. I am here because you have made my presence necessary. Oh gods, fight or flight returned with a vengeance. Sis, I'm fine. You don't need to do anything. 5 transparent tails of scarlet light swayed to life behind her. No, I think I do. John lunged before she could, caught her by the right arm, and wrenched the said limb down before her back. Down, wrenched said limb down behind her back. With the other, he hoisted her smaller body into the air, pinning her against the nearest wall he could find. It wouldn't have been possible had she reverted to her true appearance. Her true body was both taller and stronger than him, but for reasons he didn't truly understand, the little shapeshifter liked being seen as a child. She wouldn't let go of the guise if she could help it. Her pride wouldn't allow it, and so he used it to his advantage. I won't go back. Hmm? So you say? Rather than cry out, his sister made a pleased noise against the plaster. Maybe you have gotten a little stronger, but only a little. Her free hand twisted in a seal he didn't recognize. Whatever it did blasted him backwards into a wall. Something cracked, and it wasn't his back. His feet hadn't yet struck the carpet when a crimson tail caught him by the throat and slammed him face first into the floor. Stars burst from his vision. A tiny foot crushed against his back, forcing his nose to become intimate with it in a way no self-respected shinobi desired. Look at you, she tutted, leaning over him. Wasted and gasping for air, still not using your full potential. Father taught you better than this. Stop holding back. Blue eyes blazed red, his back bucked, and though he didn't move an inch, his shirt burst as 9 golden chakra tails sprang to life. Child stumbled, balance denied. In an instant, the tables turned. He righted upright, drove a fist into her solar plexus, caught her by the face as she doubled over, and rammed her into one of the beds. Those golden tethers crashed down, all but shackling her to the frame, limbs and all. A beat of silence passed between brother and sister. Impressive, she offered a low whistle as the mattress creaked beneath her. Most impressive. You've made your point. He grit his teeth, stifling the reflexive urge to rage. You need to fix that wall. I'll do it, if you let me up first, came her glib retort. What's to stop you from attacking me again? I wasn't going to, silly. Her lips pursed in a pout much like her namesake. You struck first. John didn't budge. Oh, very well. She bit her lip and drew blood, leaving a thin bead of blood to run down her chin. There, blood oath. Happy now? Reluctantly he released her. Odno angth ignadad. She snapped her fingers, muttering some words in reverse, and the cratered wall sealed itself. There, right as rain. Not at all. His mind was whirling, heart hammering a mile a minute. He didn't dare let go of his full might for fear of her lashing out again. Child was incomprehensible. He couldn't understand his sister's motives any more than he did here, any more than did any more than he did here these days. I'll be happy when you leave. Leave? You're confused. Her smile grew. I'm not here to retrieve you. John's heart skipped a beat. What? I'm here to observe you. What? Once I finish vetting your team, of course. She raised her arms, folding them before her chest. It's nothing personal. I need to make sure they meet your standards and mine. What? Speaking of which, it would seem you have the redhead firmly under your thumb. She winked at him. Feisty, that one. Loyal too. My kind of girl. Mother would approve. For a wild moment, he actually imagined Pyrrha meeting Juniper, fawning over baby pictures together. His throat closed. We're partners, weren't they? Are you, though? She tilted her head, gold tresses falling over a scarlet eye. Are you really? It seems to me that she wants to be more than that. Frankly, I'm amazed you haven't accidentally seduced half the campus by now. It's been fascinating to watch you stumble through everyday life here. Watch? Humiliated, thy name is John. When did you? Brother, isn't it obvious? Her eyes pulsed with quiet power. Did you really think I came to you first? I've been here for days. She's concealed herself from him, and he'd never noticed. His face burned redder than Ruby's namesake. This was not happening. He'd hardly taken a brawl over this gathering cross-examination. When you ran away, I was so upset. She prattled on. Where did you go? I wondered why would he do such a thing, and then I understood. She touched one hand to her chest. You were lonely. I wasn't there for you, John. I filled you not only as a sister, but as a woman. There she goes. She's off on one of her tangents. I thought you were hiding. I still am. I understand, John. Really, I do. Child stepped to him, and for a moment her very being seemed to shift, gaining height and mass where there had been hardly any before. You were lost, confused. She touched a hand to his cheek with it once, then her form snapped back, leaving him looking down at her once more and hand resting near his ribs. And it's all my fault. That changes now. I'm here for you. I wasn't lost. He bridled at her tone and patted her hand away. I made a choice. This was my decision. She sighed. Then you made a poor decision, brother of mine. You're living a lie here. I wonder how long this fiasco will last. Was she trying to provoke him? Fiasco. I've got this under control. No. His chaotic sibling shook her head. I think fiasco is the appropriate term. In fact, your entire tenure here has been quite the fiasco. That ends now. Child blurred. John tensed. Her head hit his chest. Slim arms took hold of his torso and held tight. I'm here to look out for you, little brother. John's back stiffened, mild still, mind still fearing a trick. Any moment now, her hand would knife into the side of his neck and knock him out, or she conjure forth her tails, grab him, and run off. Any one of his sisters would have done the same. Valen alone could have stunned him and hauled him back to Ansel by the ear. So why hadn't Child done the same? What what was her motive? For the life of him, he couldn't grasp it. Well, she muttered into his chest, distracting him. Aren't you going to hug your sister? Aren't you going to hug your favorite sister? John nearly choked on his own spit. Favorite? In what world? Still he recognized the implicit plea for what it was and derailed to wrap his arms around her. Child lashed harder, all but burying her face into his shirt as she basked in his presence. She'd always been clingy, but this was harmless enough. Right? Much better. She lifted her smiling visage, preening like a peacock. I need a recharge now that we've gotten a little bit of pleasantry out of the way. Quick as a flash, she grabbed him by the ear and hauled him down to look her in the eye. Furious scarlet slits bored in startled blue. If you ever, she rasped, and I mean ever, run off like that without telling me again, I will make you rue the day. Embarrassing, but not so ghastly as the punishment he'd perceived. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. Her voice trembled with emotion. Do not test me. His words died with a gurgle. In any case, you'll need to be much, much stronger if you want to stay here. She tugged him down to regard him. If I figured out where you were, it's only a matter of time until father does the same. Then what will you do? A tiny hand pinched his whiskered cheek. He won't be swayed, not like me. Do you have any plans? I will cross that bridge when I come to it. John, what else can I do? His temper sparked at last, filling him with hopeless despair. I can't beat him in a fair fight. None of us can. I know, brother of mine. I know. For once, she almost seemed sad. Even now, there's a part of me that wants to drag you home, if only to spare you from what's to come. It would be like trying to fight a hurricane. He knew that. They both did. You could help me fight him. Nope. She smacked her lips. That's off the table. I'm not the one in trouble here. You sound like Ruby. The little devil tilted her head. And that is, no, no, no. He wasn't letting her anywhere near that little cinnamon roll. Still, it would be remiss of me to leave you without a gift. She pulled the headband from her hair and offered it to him. Here. What's this? A gift. She pushed it into his hands. Just hold it and call my name if you need me. I'll come running. His brow forward. What, like a portal? I've never heard of a jutsu like that. Her smile was telling. Well, it's not a jutsu per se. You've been messing with magic again. That's gonna be mad. Come now. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. And don't sulk. She kissed his forehead as she hadn't done since he was little. If nothing else, we have the present moment. Try as he might, he didn't have the heart to push her away when she pulled him in for a hug. Child hummed and tugged his head into her chest. There's the brother I know. Osmond paused well short of Jupiter's door. This was the moment. He'd finally marshaled his courage to speak with him. He must before it was too late. All told, the idea of having a descendant was something he'd considered before. The door swung open, forcing him to take 3 steps back. A young girl emerged from within. Idly, he noticed 3 uniforms, pale blonde hair, and striking red eyes. She turned and closed it quickly behind her. Not quickly enough. He glimpsed John arc within, head in his hands. His expression looked nothing short of despondent. And then the door was closed, denying him his brief glimpse into the life of the boy who may or may not be of his blood. I thank you for your hospitality, good sir. In exchange, the strange girl dipped a shallow curtsy at him. I'll be visiting again if it's not too much trouble. Hospitality. He'd never seen this girl before in his life. His gaze zeroed in on her uniform and failed to recognize it. At a glance, it might have been a mistake for academy attire. He knew better. It was a decent facsimile, but his eyes were not so highly fooled. More than that, something about her manners instantly threw him off. You're welcome. And you are? I go by many names as she smoothed her skirt with a cherubic smile. I prefer child, if it's all the same to you. I see. He humored her with a small smile. And what is the purpose of your visit? Merely visiting my little brother. Osman took a moment to drink from his mug. An action hit his frame. What matter of madness compelled someone to name their offspring that of all things? He chortled a little and let her go. Child, indeed, almost sounded like something Salem would do back in the days. She'd ever been horrible with names. Gods above, she'd wanted to name their daughters after the seasons. Hot chocolate sprayed from his lips, blonde hair, red eyes. Hold! He spun with a cry, only to find the girl nowhere before his eyes. It was a long hallway, and she couldn't have gotten into any of the adjacent dorm rooms without a scroll. She'd simply vanished from his senses, and if she'd never, and as if she'd never been there at all. Surely it was a coincidence, wasn't his paranoid mind whirled. There was another angle, one he'd not considered until this very moment. Had one of their daughters survived that night? It was possible, too much to hope for, but possible. Neither of them had checked the bodies. They'd been in no stable mind to do so. She'd immolated him, and he could only assume she'd fled the scene, or perhaps Salem had simply had a dalliance. Questions loomed before him, impossibly large, with no answer to be found. He desperately wanted to dismiss the latter. Salem wasn't the sort to simply sleep about. He hoped they'd not seen one another for hundreds of years, but if one of the girls had survived and gone out on to have a family, and then a family from that family, so on and so forth, impossible. It had to be. Salem adored her children. If she had any descendants, she'd not let them out of her sight. Was it possible then? Did she truly not know of them? He certainly didn't. Neither option was appealing. Either they were of his blood or of hers, or both. Regardless, some added protection might well avail Mr. Ark. He really did need to get to the bottom of things with that boy, but there was still so much to do. He could approach him now. This was clearly a moment of weakness. In another life he would have. For a fall, he decided he would wait until they returned from their field trip, and if those two truly were of Salem's brood, he couldn't bring himself to kill them, not without talking to them first. His mind made up, the immortal performed a swift about the face and marched away. Curse him for being a coward. Did a head count? Juniper's face was decidedly cross at breakfast the next morning. One of the girls is missing. Care to guess who? Naruto's head sacked the table as he groaned. He knew who. Ugh. If it's her, she'll be fine. Better than fine. It would take more than a few grim to harm her, and if she tracked down John, all the better. What could possibly go wrong? Maybe I should call. Forever Fall was eerie in its beauty, red as far as the eye could see, and not a leaf of green among them. Truth be told, John found it all unsettling, and not at all for the seasons one might think. A distant part of him did find it lovely. Really, the rest of him was simply focused elsewhere on other things that involved a great deal of stress and pain, that were probably even more heated his way. Even now, Child's partly remark haunted him. There's a part of me that wants to drag you home, if only to spare you from what's to come. Spare him, she said. That was going to find him. It was only a matter of time. Somehow he'd always known that, but her presence in Beacon made it more real somehow. She might be able to talk down most of his sisters, even overpower some under the right circumstances. But Dad, John fought down a shiver. When Dad had his mind set on something, nothing could shake him. He would come for him sooner or later. If he was lucky, the old man would do so alone. If he wasn't, he'd drag Mom and the girls into this. He wasn't sure which was worse. Dad he couldn't fight, but Mom, the latter's worse. Definitely the latter. He scowled. Thought of good you were back there. Oi, I helped you when you needed it. Surely that counts for something. His scroll vibrated in his pocket. He didn't dare answer it, and he slammed the fist against the device. The call ceased. Come along now, students, Miss Goodwitch called ahead of them, breaking him from his fog. The forest of Forever Fall is indeed beautiful, but we are not here to sightsee. Professor Peach has asked all of you all to collect a jar of sap, and I'm here to make sure that none of you die while doing so. To that end, we've enlisted the aid of Team Coffee to make sure certain there are no incidents. Well, that explained the presence of an honest-to-goodness second-year team, at least. It did not, however, explain why Velvet Scarlatina was staring at him. John could feel her gaze boring into his shoulders like a drill. Worse, she looked away the moment he tried to look at her. For the life of him, he didn't know what to make of it. Was she afraid of him? After what he'd done to Carden, come to think of it, he could feel bigger boys staring at him, too, glaring more like. Should he feel guilty? Apologize? Under any circumstances, John might try to puzzle it out. Now, he palmed his forehead with a sigh. This really isn't my day. How little he knew. Previews. You're in love with him, aren't you? He'd flooded their face. Shh. Hey, John. He looked down. Yeah, Ruby backed up. Can we talk? You're a leader now, John. You don't get to be a failure. But what if I'm a failure at being a leader? Nope. For a moment, he let the mask slip. You don't seem to understand. John grabbed the Beowulf by the face, forcing its jaws apart with a horrific pop. This is my team. His eyes flashed red. These are my friends. His body burning gold and black. Leave them alone. He tore it in half. Safe? You think he's safe? He is not safe. None of you are safe. Ruby. Torchwick looked up and tuttered. Well, if it ain't a knight in shining armor, what are you gonna do, Blondie? John exhaled once. Already, that does it. Salutations, I've come to see John. Do you know where he is? Why does everyone want to fight me? Cinder frowned. And who are you? Child tilted her head. Curious. End of chapter 11.